You ready to spread some little propaganda and talk about the NBA Central Division, or what?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. All right. Well, before we get to the Central Division of the NBA's Eastern Conference, not only is the LeBron correspondent, but you're already given nickname before all of this, one of many. Philly Phil, man, Uncle Phil. The floor is yours, my brother.
Yes, sir. Well, I wanted to shout out your podcast with Malik, Fire Podcast. I know you guys briefly touched on the LeBron situation. I was gonna go next to the Central Division, but since we got an announcement from the last time we talked, I was like, might as well just kind of give my thoughts about it, and then just talk about Philly a little bit, just since our review of that other NBA division, Philly made a big move, so that deserves a kind of like a retalk. And then I definitely want to hit the Central Division. So I'm gonna try to go quick with the LeBron slash Philly thing. As a LeBron fan, I know Philly was one of the options. I'm not gonna say like I'm super shocked, but I am shocked he did choose Philly. Um, Maybe there were some signs that if you really truly listen to his party and Rich Paul, maybe it was kind of obvious since he went to that fanatic, which Michael Rupin hosts, who's a Philly guy or used to be a Philly owner. Bob Myers was on the Rich Paul podcast. But knowing my essence, maybe some other people were listening to like Shams, Brian Windhorst, and other people, Pat Bev, on other rumors swirling, which kind of led me thinking that Miami was going to be the spot. Philly, man, after thinking some time, I like it. I think it's something new. It's they have a chance if everything goes right. Like it sounds really good on paper. Um I do question the fit a little bit, but maybe I don't want to you don't want to overthink it as well. I think they got the talent to definitely be one of the top teams in the East. And possibly go get the chip. Um Again, like I think his time with the Lakers was over. Even if he took the pay cut with the Lakers, I don't think they would have been legit contenders, even if it was Luca, LeBron, Reeves, and Kessler. I think they would have been a good team. Don't get me wrong, but I still don't see that being good enough to beat the Thunder or Spurs. I think it was his time to go, and he delivered them a chip. It's funny because now Laker fans are starting to kind of turn on him, but hey man, he did what he did there. He brought the relevancy back, and now you guys turn the new page with Luca and Reeves. And I'm excited to kind of chirp back with the Laker fans. I'm excited with the new rivalry with the New York fans. I just came out of my 10-year high school reunion. It was good chatting it up with Armand and kind of hyping up what the New York Philly rivalry will become next season. I saw another New York Knicks fan, Ron, at the gym, and he was very excited actually that there's gonna be a rivalry between me and him now. We were just chatting basketball, and he had a big smile on his face. He's, man, I'm hyped for this next season for that Knicks Sixers rivalry incoming. So yeah, no, I'm excited. It's something new. It kind of gives me a little hope. Hey, maybe he can get another chip. Not guaranteeing it. Again, a lot of fit questions maybe in the air, but on paper they look good. And I think it's an exciting see. And I hope they become good. Like I hope they're at least in contention with that team. I'm rejuvenated, man, and no better city than Philadelphia, bro, where the Philadelphia Eagles play as well. So city of brotherly love, man. That's all I gotta say. We don't just spread propaganda. We spread love down here.
LePropaganda, baby. We love him, man.
But yeah, man. That and then with the Sixers, man. Wonder how that team fits. Wonder if they're pretty reliant on Embiid. We'll see what happens there. Is he gonna stay healthy? I think that's the biggest question mark in my opinion. Because if he's out, they don't really have a reliable big man with them. I wonder eventually maybe they'll probably try out the fit, but do they eventually maybe trade him and this is a future talk, but I don't know if this is realistic, but trade him for like AD and the Wizards or trade him for like some depth pieces. Like in Dallas, maybe you get like Gafford, Clay, and PJ Washington for him. But again, I'm just spinning propaganda right there. But that's maybe some future talks you could have later on. But I would test out the fit, see if it works out. But I wanted to go pretty quick on the Philly LeBron side of things because I know we wanted to talk about the Central Division.
Hey,
But
we
before
always
I
got time.
go
We
on,
always got time for LeBron, man. We love LeBron here.
yeah. But before I move on, man, did you have any? I know you talked with Malik, but any reaction on the Philly Braun transaction? And now you can see
Uh,
where DeRozan might go now.
yeah. As far as LeBron, I think like you said, the more you think about it, it's not totally surprising. He's in Philly, and I think on paper, man, that's about as good of a team as you can build on paper. I mean, in any sport, at least starting five wise. I mean, obviously, games aren't played on paper, and it's a really deep league. Not just the East, the West. It's not like they're going to be guaranteed to, make a deep run or anything. But I mean, considering where Philly was a month ago, I think they'll take that position they're in now 10 times out of 10. So, um, obviously, I'm sure the questions will persist. How is everyone going to fit together? You've got a bunch of guys who are 1As, 1Bs, 1Cs, and 1Ds on any team. Now they're all playing together, so obviously there's going to have to be a little bit of sacrifice involved. I think speaking of propaganda, I know Shams Charania was plugging in the propaganda earlier, talking about LeBron's probably going to play point guard or be on the ball a little bit more, which it makes sense. I think um, if I had to guess, I think LeBron's tenure with the Lakers, especially in the last a little bit with Luca and AR, and then when both of those guys were out against Houston, I think they kind of talked about it. Rich Paul and LeBron, where maybe it's just for lack of a better term, convenient propaganda, but I think LeBron at this stage in his career, obviously, I don't think age is just a number at this point. He's still doing his thing, so. I think he'll be able to. I think though obviously you never know how it's going to play out, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way. They'll find a way. I think what'll be good for them regular season wise is I think they'll have 82 games in the regular season to be able to figure some shit out and see who works well with what and what works best, and there might be some growing pains. I'm not expecting them to go on a 15-game winning streak off the bat or anything like that. But honestly, as much shit as I give LeBron coverage and whatnot, I do think it's as objectively as I can say, it's an interesting fit. Where like I said, you got a bunch of guys who can lead a team and they're all playing together. It's like an all-star team and a starting five, and they got some good depth pieces too. They made some good signings, for the bench as well, and um, I'm interested to see how it plays out. I think they'll be able to load manage some guys. Like I wouldn't be surprised if are they all going to play 82 games in the regular season? Probably not, but it's fascinating. It's going to be a good team on paper, but. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't surprise me to see LeBron on the ball and LeBron, being more of a playmaker. Not that he hasn't been a playmaker for the last two plus decades, but I think Maxey can score the ball with the best of them. Jaylen Brown can score the ball with the best of them. Embiid, VJ Edge comes on a bum by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like. LeBron, I think, has had his moment of, being the top dog, and I think, obviously, from what it sounds like, they just want to win. So I think, they'll all have to sacrifice a little bit as far as like individual glory and statistics and whatnot. But I think they'll all have the ability to, if they can play their cards right, within any given game. It could be, one night it could be LeBron, another night it could be Maxey, another night it could be Jaylen Brown, it could be Embiid, it could be Edgecombe. They got Anthony Simons. They picked up KCP. They got a couple of cool young players as well that we can get into further in depth. Like it's not a bad basketball team by any stretch of the imagination. So, uh,
Did
you
they
know,
officially get KCP, by the way?
they did get KCP. Yeah, they got him. Memphis bought him out, and he signed with the Sixers. So. They got a cool team, man. I give credit where it's due to Philly and big game Bob Myers and Mike Gainsey coming over from Cleveland, and they're definitely in a better position now than they were 2 months ago on paper. But we haven't even gotten to the season yet. But yeah, like you mentioned with Armon and Ron, we got to get Ron on here, and then obviously Armon. It goes without saying. So. Man, when we get to the Central Division and the rest of these divisions, and we go East West, I mean, there's a lot of really good teams outside of Philly, and so like I said, Philly's not a guarantee to win it, but I think it's going to be exciting, man. And you know what? The least surprising development will be, Philly's going to get the maximum allocation of national TV and streaming service games possible. Um, I think it's 34 off the top of my head. So they'll get at least 34 out of 82, which is almost half their season will be on some form of ESPN, NBC, Amazon. Um, so they're going to be the talk of the town, and there's going to be a lot of LePropaganda. But as objectively as I can say, um, I want to see how it works. Just because, like I said, they've got all these guys who can lead the team on their own, but they're all playing together, and I think obviously, you never know how it's going to play out, but I think these guys will be able to find a way to make it work. It's going to be fun, man. They're going to be a tough team to beat if they're all healthy.
No, totally agreeing, and I'm going to give Bob Myers his props, man. He just stepped in and he's building like on paper like a super team, and yeah, man, like you mean you got to put him up there with one of the greats GMs as we saw his dynasty build with the Warriors, and then him stepping right away with the Sixers. And you want to know a funny thing as well, dude, is Jalen Brown. I know he got a taste of like being the 1A guy, and like he kind of got that taste, and I figured he probably wanted to get traded away from the Celtics to kind of be a 1A. Now he's with a bunch of other really good players, but
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
I
good
think
point.
he's go ahead.
No, I said that's a good point.
And I think he's smart enough to know, like, hey, man, like we got a championship potential roster. Don't let the ego kind of get in the way. I think he'll make the proper sacrifices, or I think all the players will make proper sacrifices to go for the chip. And I just want to point out one other thing with Jalen Brown, that maybe some people have brought up is right when they got eliminated from the Sixers, he went on his pod to complain about Embiid on how he flops too much. And then I remember him and LeBron had a little, not like a dramatic, but a little back and forth about his son. Um, so it's kind of funny how they're all on the same team now, but I'm sure they're all grown men.
Yeah, they'll
They'll,
figure. They'll hash it out. They'll go, like you said, they're going, man. They'll hash it out. But yeah, that's a good
but
point. But yeah, credit to Bob and credit to Mike Gainsey too, coming over from Cleveland. I know part of the if you dig through the weeds, Mike Gainsey and LeBron both kind of came up at the same time, and in Cleveland, or not Cleveland, but in Ohio. If I'm not mistaken, Mike Gainsey was the runner-up to LeBron for State Player of the Year in the state of Ohio. So they go way back, and obviously from the Cleveland days, and then you've got the Tyrese Maxey connection, and you've got the ownership connection. So all these different pieces. It's not totally surprising, but yeah, you mentioned Embiid, like I feel like with Philly, what makes them interesting is that all of these guys don't have to play 82 games. So like, in an era, maybe sometimes we use the word load management a little too loosely, but like, you can afford to rest a guy like Embiid, a guy like LeBron, and give him a day off because then you could still trot out Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brown, VJ Edgecombe, and those guys need a day off. You've got LeBron, so it's like they can all play together, but then throughout the regular season, while they figure out their chemistry, if injuries arise or someone needs a day off, on top of that, beyond anything else, they can, they have enough power within themselves to where someone needs to step up and maybe have a little bit more of the ball in a specific game, they can do that. But you mentioned Embiid earlier. I think sometimes people forget how good that dude is, and I know
Oh
he's
no,
not
he's a
healthy all the
beast.
time, but he's an MVP and he's a really good player. So it's like, and then Tyrese Maxey's one of the best young players in the league, and Jalen Brown's one of the best players in the league, and then VJ Edgecombe, like I said, you and I've talked about it before on previous recordings. Like, VJ Edgecombe was on a different team. He probably has a much different role, and he's one of those guys. He's like a foundational building block on most teams. And now with the Sixers, he still is that, but maybe he plays a little bit of a different role than he would on maybe a team like, I'm just spitballing here, but like Sacramento. He has a different role in Philly than he would if they just put the ball in his hands and say, young men, go out there and take 15, 16 shots a game. But he's a really good defensive player in his own right. And yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be fun to see how these guys work. Someone's gonna have to do the dirty work. Someone's gonna have to go out there and I think sometimes people are overestimating that. I think Jalen Brown's a great defender. VJ is a good defender. I think it'll be fun, man. We could spend hours talking
I
about
think
the
there's just so
Sixers.
much to talk about this team, bro. It's funny because I'm like, oh, we should be quick, but I'm like, dude, there's just too much. But I'm for sure. I know like all the ESPN, all those we'll talk about them. We'll talk about them during the
Yeah, I
season.
mean, you
So
know what? Knock on wood, it's not even August yet. We got plenty of time to kind of ramp it up and get there in due time. And the rest of the offseason is still kind of unfolding. But um, yeah, I mean, we talked about the Atlantic Division, and this is a big one. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, dude, like when you were listing out all those players, I was like, dude, like maybe I'm just like, are we just overthinking it, bro? Like I don't see how this doesn't work. Like how this team isn't a contender. You know what I mean? Like
No,
with
that's what I'm
all
saying.
those
I
good.
think that's what I'm saying. I think some people are just overestimating it a little bit. Like, how they're gonna. It's almost like it sets up like if they do end up succeeding, it's like against all odds. It's like, what do you mean against all odds? They got it all. They got a great team on paper, man. Like, it'll really just come down to health and chemistry. But I think these guys are all grown men and they're all smart enough to know that this is going to be, they're going to have a window. And even when LeBron retires, too, I mean, Tyrese Maxey's not going anywhere and whatnot. But, just in the immediate future, like these guys are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and they'll be one of the toughest teams to beat. And I'm excited as much as obviously, I give the LePropaganda a hard time as objectively as I can say just trying to speak, as truthfully as I can. I really don't see a scenario where if they're all healthy, they suck. Like they're going to be really tough to beat, especially in the playoff series. In a 7-game series, it'll be hard to beat those guys if they're all on the court and they're all healthy. Um, and then a guy like Nick Nurse typically, he doesn't really go to Nick Nurse tends to play his starters a lot. They don't. He's not one of those coaches that goes like 10, 11 deep. It tends to be a solid 8, maybe 9-man rotation, a lot of heavy minutes. Tyrese Maxey played a bajillion minutes last year. Um, it's one of those things. I think they'll probably find a balance of that. But they have so much depth within that starting lineup, and then, again, don't sleep on their bench too. They've got some solid bench players that I give them credit, dude. In the world of first and second aprons, they built about as good of a team on paper as you can. Especially considering they got knocked out by the Knicks in the playoffs just a couple months ago,
Mhm.
in a non-competitive series, and now here we are, a couple months later, and they got Jalen Brown, they got LeBron. And they only had to give up Paul George and a couple of picks to make it happen.
Yeah, that's the modern NBA right now.
So yeah, credit where it's due, man. They whether it works out or not, it's a great gamble. And like you said, city of Philly, city of brotherly love. I mean, between them and the Eagles, it's going to be a lot of propaganda coming out of this, and then the Phillies and the Flyers. But yeah, Phillies. Philly, Sixers, Eagles. I mean, wow, um, it's going to be a lot of attention on the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, no better sports city, man. Shout out Malik and Vince for that. Um, but yeah, no, man, we can go days about talking about Philly and the Sixers, but well, I'll save for future other points. But no, as a LeBron fan, I'm very excited. I like kind of like just a change of things. It was kind of getting the same old with the Lakers. So I'm excited to kind of jump back to the East, and I'm kind of hyped how the East is turning around. I think the East is a very intriguing conference this coming season. I'm very excited to watch it. And then yeah, man, I think we jump into the Central. I think maybe I'm just looking at the standings. Maybe we just start from last to first. We'll start with the Indiana Pacers, a team I really liked in the past, who made the finals and have beaten the Knicks twice in the past. I don't know if you saw. I think today or yesterday, Halliburton was doing a like a through the legs dunk. So he seems like he's kind of getting back. I think he's one of the premier league players in the league. I think he can be the best player on the championship team, and we maybe could have saw that if he stayed healthy that game seven. But that's a big what if. But he took his team to a finals game seven. I like how that team plays, like their style, how Halliburton kind of runs that point guard. I'm a big Halliburton fan. I think people kind of gave him too much shit before that playoff run, and I think he shut everyone up during that playoff run. But to talk about their offseason moves, I know this one was not more so offseason, but it was more so last trade deadline, where they did an overreach with the Zubac trade. Even the GM admitted it on Twitter. But they still got a pretty solid center. Like, he's no bum. Like, they still got a good center, but they did get kind of for all the tanking they were doing last season, it was kind of coming to waste because they lost that pick. As they traded that for Zubac, and they traded a pretty solid player in Matherin as well for Zubac. And as before I go on with the Pacers as well, for all the teams, other teams that were in the LeBron race except Philly, I will definitely talk about them as we get through the division reference. But um, am I missing any moves with the Pacers, Ryan? Or was I know that was the big one? They kept pretty much the same team. What I'm assuming.
I think they made their big move with Zubac, with Big Zoo. Um, yeah, and then obviously, I mean, Halliburton coming back is kind of like an acquisition in itself if you think about it.
Oh, they
But yeah,
got
man.
Kelly Oubre. I forgot Kelly
Yeah,
Oubre
yeah,
as
they
well.
got Kelly Oubre. He's honestly been one of the most underrated players in the league for a while now. He's always been one of my, I've always enjoyed watching him play. I always felt like, he was the kind of guy that doesn't get a lot of media attention and whatnot, but he can do a lot of really fun things on both sides of the ball. He can score the ball. He can defend. He's done it pretty much every team he's played for. Yeah, look, you mentioned it. It's a team that went to Game 7 in the NBA Finals last calendar year in 2025. And you touched on it. The East. I think this is the best the Eastern Conference has been in our lifetime, and we can continue to talk about that in the coming months. But I think with all the teams we'll talk about, we talked a lot about Philly just now. Like we shouldn't forget about the Pacers. Like with the healthy Tyrese Halliburton, there's no reason to think that they're going to be a bottom team. Like they'll find themselves back in the thick of the conversation, and just another team in a really loaded Eastern Conference now, where we'll continue to run through the teams. I mean. Um, Honestly, for the first time in our lifetime, not only is it the best the East has been, it's the deepest it's been. I don't really know who's gonna, there are some teams that for the first time in our lifetime they'll miss the playoffs, and like, damn, I can't believe they missed the playoffs.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm excited to see Indy this year. I think Halliburton, everything he said has been encouraging. I know he had the whole shingles thing too, but I think he'll come
yeah,
back better than ever. And uh, you know, uh, I know they might have on paper definitely overpaid for Zoo, and I'm on record saying that as well. But two things could be true at once. I think Zoo will play pretty well for them. They needed a guy like that, especially when they lost Miles Turner. Obviously, they're totally different players, but I think him and Halliburton can have a pretty good two-man game, and they got a really good team, man. They're gonna be tough. They finished in last place last season, but that's a good basketball team, man. Let's not forget.
Yeah, and definitely like Nemhard a lot too. Like I like that team. I do wonder the because it is a big difference between Zubac and Turner how they play. Because Turner's more of like a stretch big man, and Zubac he's kind of more like an inside type of guy, and he can do the pick and roll. So I still think it'll be a good fit with him and Hallie. And I think the Pacers, it all depends how good Hallie is right away. Like is he going to be back to form, or is it going to take him some time? But again, I think during playoff time, this team will has the experience. I think it'll be a tough out. They're potentially like, if everything goes right again, they can make the finals again. Type of team.
Oh yeah, they should not be lost in the shuffle of the conversation. Like they are, if they're healthy and everything's going right. This is a team, like you said, in a what if, maybe they're NBA champions 2 years ago, or 2 seasons ago, I should say. So, um, yeah, I think any conversation about the East and about the NBA, we shouldn't forget about Indiana. They're going to be a tough out, like you said, in the playoffs, especially assuming they get there and everybody's healthy. But um, I really want
Yeah,
to see. I want to see how they look. With the healthy Halliburton, and there are obviously some other players that we're forgetting. You mentioned even Nemhard too. Big fan of his game.
Siakam
Uh,
too.
yeah. Oh, Siakam. I've always been a Siakam guy,
No,
dating
he's a
back to the.
beast.
Yeah, he's arguably one of, if not the most underrated players in the NBA. He's such a good player, man. He does so many things. And he was honestly last year might have been his best season as a pro. It just kind of gets
I was
lost
gonna
in the
say,
shuffle.
he was really good last season. I just think because
Oh,
the team wasn't doing good, he wasn't noticeable. But
yeah, no, he was spectacular last season. So I mean, he's one of the best players in the league. So um, I mean, that's a tough team, man. And that's why they don't play games on paper. They play them in real life because maybe on paper you look at Philly, you look at Indy. A lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, Philly, no way." But if they played each other in a playoff series, I mean, this is speaking hypothetically. Indy's got a shot against anybody, in my opinion. That if they're healthy and they're clicking like that, especially like you mentioned, just the style of play, the way that they play, the pace, the team basketball, the fact that they can do, they can play at both ends of the floor. Like, yeah, that's a really good team, man. I'm excited to watch them this season.
and they have the mental edge where like they know they can beat any team in the East. They got the continuity. They have the mental edge. So I'm very excited to see how
Yeah.
they are. And like you said, it'll be a tough out. It's just again how healthy Halliburton will be is the big question. But I'm assuming he'll be able to recover well, and it'll probably just take him some games to kind of get back into form and that team into form. But moving on to the next team, you're gonna I think I'm gonna definitely let you start with this team. But let me just recap the moves they made. Starting with the Chicago Bulls, they signed. And I didn't even realize they did this. They signed Norman Powell. I know they traded for Claxton, and then they brought back Zach Collins, and then they drafted Caleb Wilson. I forgot he's a beast in summer league. So I'm gonna let you touch on this team. I know you were
Yeah.
kind of been watching this team starting when the Lonzo DeRozan days, how they were first for a little bit, and then you kind of seen them stay mid for a while. So I'll let you start, and then I'll jump in after.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think with Chicago. Um, I mean, first of all, rest in peace to Stacey King, the color commentator. I think we might have mentioned that before, but I was actually I was watching the NBA TV the other day. They show like replays of some of the games, and I think it was who were they playing? I think it was against San Antonio. They were showing a replay of it. And, I always enjoy listening to their commentary team, but as far as on paper, I will say, new front office. I've been critical in the past of the ownership group, them and the White Sox, but I know you're not the biggest baseball guy on planet Earth, but the White Sox are having their best season in a long time, and it wouldn't surprise me if I'm not suggesting that the Bulls are going to be playoff team right off the bat or anything like that, but I think that this is the most optimistic and exciting that they've been in a really long time. The new front office. I tip my cap on paper. They've done a really good job so far. I'm excited to see this team. I think they've got some depth. They've got some interesting new pieces. I mean, you mentioned the rookie, Caleb Wilson. They got a couple other rookies, Dalen Swain, Jalen Sellers, whatnot. Um, they've still got a guy like Josh Giddey, a guy like Matas Buzelis, who I think will take a big leap this season.
Hmm.
Um, they got some really good young talent. I think they'll surprise some people. I think they'll be better than expected. The one part I do want to see is the coaching component. With Tiago Splitter coming over from Portland, what does that look like? How do they? What kind of style of play do they have? Especially because Tiago, with the interim job last year in Portland, he did a great job. But it's different when you're inheriting a job mid-season with a team that's already playing a certain way, versus you're starting from scratch with your own team. So I want to see how they play, but I'm interested to see how it works. Caleb Wilson's really good, man. I mean, the other two rookies, I mean, all three of the guys that they added as rookies, I like a lot. And then again, a guy like Matas Buzelis, I think is gonna take a leap, and people shouldn't forget about him. And a guy like Nick Claxton has always been one of the better. Even though he's not the tallest big man in the world, he's always been a good rim protector and a good shot blocker, good rim threat. Lob threat and whatnot. And Norman Powell kind of does his thing. Norman Powell's going to get his buckets. Norman Powell will be good for 20 a night more often than not. So yeah, I'm interested to see. Look, are they going to be a playoff team? Are they going to be, are they going to maybe not? I don't know. I mean, it's a tough Eastern Conference, but as harsh and critical as I've been on them in the past, especially with the previous front office, I do give them some credit. I think you mentioned Alonzo, DeRozan, Levine, Caruso, Javante Green, etc. team from many moons ago, about 5 years ago. Um, I think you can make the argument that this is probably the most optimistic that the Bulls have been even before then. I mean, I think you could even take it back to the D Rose days. I think they got some really. I don't know how it's going to play out, but you mentioned DeRozan, like between them and Sacramento. We can get to Sacramento in due time, but I'm intrigued with both for different reasons. But I think with Chicago, they've got some pieces that at least they're not totally fucked as they've been in years past, where they really were fucked. I think now they're not totally fucked.
Yeah, man. No, it's funny, bro, because before I was bringing this question up, I was like, "Damn, the Bulls are like finally choosing direction." But then I realized I'm like, dude, they have some good pieces. Like, I think this is a fun league pass team. Um, I wonder, like, if I think the franchise player is probably going to be more likely like a Caleb Wilson, but I mean, Josh Giddey has been putting good numbers. I wonder if he could be your number one guy to like winning wise, but maybe he doesn't need to be on the team if Caleb Wilson and Buzelis, develop to be the one and two. But I mean, Giddy's still a good player. He puts up good numbers, and I still have a grudge against him and Buzelis because me personally, I was in the championship finals, and I play lock-in style. So you lock in one performance, and Giddy and Bazilius had the game of their life against the Warriors in that one regular season game that went to like OT, if you remember, where I think
Oh
Bazilius
yeah.
dropped like 40 or something, and then Giddy had like a nasty triple double. But like you said, man, I think you kind of talked me into it, bro. I would be optimistic. I think this team it would be a fun watch this season. They could possibly make the plan, but I think the East did get deeper, so I don't think it's as easy to make the plan in the East as it used to be. But I think Bazilius takes a leap. I think he was playing a lot better during the end of the regular season. Caleb Wilson's looking strong in the summer league. And I think Giddy, he's a pretty good player. And then they got some like some solid people that can step in right away, such as like a Claxton and a Powell who can easily get you. He's a bucket getter. He's a good shooter. Get you a 20 game. He can be one of the scorers on the team. So yeah, man, I'm interested to see how this team rolls. They got some solid pieces around to surround. I just don't know, are they trying to win now? Can this team stay healthy with maybe some of their good players? But yeah, I think it's a young, flashy league pass team that, if things go right, could potentially surprise some people.
Yeah.
Like you said, I'm pretty optimistic with
I
this team.
want
I
to see
think
how
they're
it
starting
plays
to.
out. It's a little too early because you don't know what
Yeah,
type of style of play they're gonna have. But I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm more optimistic with the Bulls than I was 2 months ago. And then yeah, Caleb Wilson's gonna be really good too. I mean, that guy's fucking incredible. He's gonna be a really good NBA player. I mean, he's gonna be one of the best players in the league. I feel like in due time, he's really good. Um, both sides of the ball. I think he's a great defender, and he can get you. He could be one of those guys that could get you 25, 30 a night offensively, and he can also clamp you down defensively. He can rebound the ball. He can lock you down. He can do a lot of things. He's a really fun player. And then you mentioned summer league. We'll get to that in due time, but he was a joy to watch at summer league as well. So yeah, and then I'll talk about the other guys in summer league as well. But yeah, I think like you said, they might not make the playoffs. They might finish in the bottom five of the conference, but like you said, they'll be a fun watch. And it's one of those teams I'm curious to see how it plays out.
yeah. And as a Chicago fan, man, I'd be like very happy that, like, you might have finally found a superstar since Derrick Rose. If Caleb Williams or Wilson is I said Williams, Caleb Wilson.
I mean, now that you mentioned, I didn't even realize they got two Caleb W's in Chicago now.
Two Caleb Doves in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm
But no,
surprised
man,
no
like,
one's come up with that for a marketing campaign.
yeah, yeah.
There you go. We just gave him a free ad, man.
Yeah, man. If I'm a Chicago fan, you got the Bears with Caleb Williams, and then you got the Bulls with Caleb Wilson. So yeah, that is the two Caleb Dubs. That's a good marketing strategy. You said,
There you go. We just gave him free marketing, man.
yeah.
People pay for that shit apparently.
Yeah, no, I agreed, but no, man, I totally agree with you. I think like you said, like, we might be like a year or two early on this team, but I think this team has some potential if they keep going developing the right way
Yeah,
with the
I want
front.
to see. It's to me the part I want to see is the Tiago splitter element of it. With the coaching and the tactical element. I want to see how they play. What type of style of play did they implement? What's their tactical identity? That's the part I want to see. But on paper, definitely, I am intrigued. Um, and then again, I want to give some love to the other two rookies in due time as well. One of which was another first round pick, and then the undrafted guy, Jalen Sellers. I think he'll make the roster sooner than later. I think he's on a two-way right now. I think he'll make the standard roster. That dude can play.
Hmm.
For anybody out there who doesn't know the name now, I think in due time you will. He's a really fun player to watch. He was really good at summer league too, which we'll get to that in due time. So yeah, Chicago, like you mentioned, that's a league pass team. I want to see how they play.
Yeah, man, and then I know that Jalen Smith is pretty solid on that team too. I know they
Yeah,
gave up
Jalen
Ao
Smith,
to
Trey
Minnesota,
Jones.
but
Don't forget about Trey
yeah,
Jones.
Trey
He's a
Jones
really good
too.
player. Isaac Okoro can play good defense. I can't even forget about Leonard Miller, my guy. They
Yeah.
finally freed him from Minnesota. He's a really good young player. Been waiting for him to get consistent minutes for it feels like 15,000 years, and he finally got it at the end of the year. He's a really fun player. They still got Rob Dillingham, who was a top 10 pick a couple years ago. Um, Although, admittedly, I think I'm more of a Leonard Miller guy. But yeah, they got some really good players, man. You can't forget about Leonard Miller. I think he's a really good player too. I think he'll surprise some people as well. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen him play by now, he's a really good player, man. I've been waiting for him to get consistent minutes for a long time. So um, that's a fun team, man. For the first time in a long time, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, and I totally forgot. Like, like you mentioned, Tiago Splitter was the coach. I actually didn't realize that until you mentioned it. But yeah, like you said, man. Like, again, like, we might be a year or two early on this team, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make the play in. I think that'd
That's
be
the
like,
best way to do it, man. It's better to be.
yeah,
We like to be ahead of the curve, man.
no, exactly.
Knock on wood.
But the next team I'll move on to, which I feel like we probably have a lot to talk about, is the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, there you go.
Um, I mean, I could start it off. Obviously, they made the big move trading Giannis. I think we both agreed it was kind of overdue time. Like I think it was they weren't winning with him. They might as well like leverage trading him and start rebuilding. I know they took on that Damian Lillard stretch contract to kind of get Miles Turner in, just to kind of give one last hope with Giannis. I wasn't a big fan of that move at the time because like again, like Miles Turner's a solid piece, but you're really gonna do all that and think you're gonna become like a team that I think didn't make the playoffs or was like not making much noise to winning a chip with that move. I don't think so, but I think they made the right move trading the honest. I think we've talked in the past. I did like the pieces they got for that deal, and I don't think they like I don't think they'll be like a bad team maybe because they got Tyler Hero who's he's good. He's a good scorer. He gets buckets. He's definitely gonna have the motivation to prove something. I mean, he was smack talking Bam and he got punched, so he definitely has he has something to go at it. And honestly, bro, they got Khalil Ware. I'm a pretty big fan of that guy. I think he has potential. He's a tall. He's like what 7'3", 7'4". He can shoot. He can shoot. He was putting up good numbers when he was kind of getting minutes when Bam was out yeah, or even when Hero was out, he would start with Bam, I believe. So I think he's pretty good as well. They got like some of those Miami guys like Jack, or I can't say his name, but Hawkes. I think he's a pretty solid player as well. Um, and I think they got a lot of picks, so I think they're obviously probably going to try to rebuild, but I think they got some solid players that might keep them like I won't say make the playoffs, but just at least keep them like competitive, like watchable. I would say. I didn't like the Gary Trent move. I think they overpaid for that. And I think the league was actually investigating that. I did like Taylor Jenkins replacing Doc Rivers. I've always kind of liked him, or I thought he did pretty solid in Memphis. I know he kind of fell off at the end, but I think in the beginning he was doing pretty good with them. So I want to shout out there, and then yeah, man. I wonder what they do. Are they gonna keep Hero in these Miami Heat pieces they got? Or are they gonna just trade for more picks and just start rebuilding from scratch? We'll see. I'd say maybe like maybe see what the Hero wear and Hawkes players and then as they get the higher picks, start drafting some young players. And like I said, I think you were in the side where I think that they made the right deal over doing the Jalen Brown Celtics deal. At the time, I thought they should have done the Brown deal because I thought they would get a lot for Brown, but it didn't look like the Celtics got much for Brown. So maybe they did make the right move of just sticking with this trade. So that's my opinion on them. So I say the Bucks, like I think it's pretty similar to the Bulls, where like maybe their ceiling is like a plan, but I'd be more optimistic about the future of the Bulls and watching wise until the Bucks actually draft some good players with their new picks coming up.
Yeah, I think with Milwaukee, it might not be the most popular opinion, but I think they're it's a common theme with our conversation tonight. I think they're in a much better position now than they were 2 months ago. Obviously, Giannis is a great player. He's champion. He's an MVP. He's one of the best players in the leagues. I get that. We'll get to Miami in due time. Um, but yeah, with Milwaukee, man, I think honestly I'm intrigued as well. I think kind of similarly to Chicago. I think you made a good point. It's a cool parallel. I think they're going to be a fun league pass team. Look, are they going to make the playoffs? Maybe not, but. You mentioned the guys they got from Miami, Khalil Ware. I think we like him both a lot. He's got a lot of potential on both ends of the floor. I think, um, I think with Milwaukee, it's a perfect opportunity for him where, maybe in Miami with Spoelstra and the Heat culture and the standard that they have. Um, I think, there were a lot of instances where Khalil Ware would have really good games and then maybe it wouldn't be consistent minutes because Spoelstra and Miami are looking for specific things, and I think now with Milwaukee, I think they'll be able to give him a little bit of a longer leash to where I think it'll actually free him, and I think he'll take a leap and he'll be a really good player. And I mean, he's got, to be honest, he's an all-star level talent.
I agree.
Um, so I think him going to Milwaukee is perfect for him. I think it's better for him to be out of Miami. I think it's the perfect opportunity for him. We always talk about, regardless of the sport, it's about opportunity and it's about fit. And I think, the first couple of years in Miami for him might have been good for him in some ways, but I think getting out of Miami might actually be a blessing. I think with Milwaukee, it'll give him the opportunity to really take a leap, and he's got a really high ceiling. So I think it would not surprise me one bit if Colo Ware has some monster games throughout the season. You mentioned Tyler Hero. He's a Milwaukee native. I think he'll be motivated. I think he's definitely pissed off that he's been in trade rumors for the last god amount of years, and uh, I think, I mean, you mentioned him and Bam getting a little altercation in Vegas. Um, I think Tyler Hero is going to be motivated to show not only Miami but the rest of the league that he's a really good player when he's healthy. In many ways, I mean, he's a totally different player, but kind of like Norman Powell, Tyler Hero, you can kind of pencil him in for 20 a night, and that's a skill. Jaime Jaquez Jr. was really good for Miami in that six-man role last year. I'll be interested to see what kind of role he has with Milwaukee, but he's a really good young player. And then Yakushonis that they got as well was a lottery pick last year
Oh
from Miami.
yeah, he's good.
And yeah, he's got some talent. He can pass the ball. He can shoot it a little bit. Maybe hasn't looked as great initially, but sometimes with young players you got to be patient. He's a really good. I like him a lot at Illinois. I think with an expanded role, he can do some good things. You mentioned the draft capital they got, the rookies that they got. We'll talk about summer league in due time. I know they got Nate Ament with the Heat pick that they got, but the guy that they got with their own pick, Braden Burries. You mentioned Caleb Wilson. Braden Burries was right up there with Caleb Wilson as one of the best players in summer league. I think that guy is going to be a foundational building block for them. He could be the kind of guy that they can build their team around. As their point guard of the future, if you will, or combo guard. I want to see what it looks like. What kind of they got a lot of combinations of different players they could play. With Burries and Hero and Colo Ware and all these different guys. And then you mentioned Taylor Jenkins. I think people forget that he was he's a pretty good coach. It didn't end that well in Memphis, but he was a big reason why Memphis took a leap with their young core in the first place. And I think in Milwaukee, it's a fresh chance for him too. So, and then you can't forget about Ryan Rollins as well. He's a
Oh
really good young
yeah,
player.
totally forgot about that.
Can't forget about him. He's a really good young player. Kevin Porter Jr. as well. Like they
Oh,
got some
bro,
really good.
I'm forgetting about that too.
So they got some good players, man. It's a good, it's not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Like again, it's kind of similar to Chicago, where it's like, are they going to make the playoffs? Maybe not, but I think people will maybe, like you said, where maybe it won't happen immediately, but if people give them patience and they let them do their thing, I think they can have a higher ceiling now than they did 2 months ago.
No, I do. I want to shout out like Porter and Rollins. They actually had really good seasons, or good seasons. Even when Giannis was out, they were putting up some good numbers. I do worry though with Hero's like injury history. That does concern me, or even like with Porter Jr. as well. They're both kind of like injury prone or like not on the court all the time. So that is a risk for like short term success this season.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like you
they do
said, they
have a
got some.
glut. All those guys kind of play the same position too. So one of them's gonna probably have to come off the bench. Maybe they flip one of them. Time will tell.
No, yeah, no, yeah. But yeah, man, no, I agree. I don't think like they're gonna if they're like somewhat healthy. I don't think this team's fucked. Is what I'm trying to say. Like I think they got a pretty solid team. If everything goes the right way, I think they could be a playing team. But I don't. But ultimately, I think they made the right move, bro. Like as we saw, the last few seasons were kind of a mess, And Doc Rivers as a coach, it was kind of getting, even I was hearing some stories where the players were not respecting him. I think it was just time. It was time for the Bucks to kind of just cut their loss, trade Giannis, and start kind of building from scratch. And I think they have a good opportunity for take some time with it. So yeah. So moving on, we got two more teams from this division. They both did play in the conference finals. I'm going to start with the Cavs. This is one of the teams that was probably close to getting LeBron or was in the race. Um, so what I know after the post LeBron, they signed what Mario Harzonich. I don't know why he was getting so much buzz.
Mario Hazonia.
Harzonia. Uh, I think they pretty much kept the same team as what I'm assuming. I don't think they made any crazy moves. I think the crazy moves they made was like the last trade deadline. Um, I mean, I think people have different perspectives on this team. I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong. You might be more optimistic on this team compared to me from like last season, but I
Oh
don't.
man, no.
Oh no. Well, I think like I know this team made the conference finals, but I kind of you have to remember, and I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about like, all the fans that are watching. Is like this team barely made it to the conference finals. Like they barely scratched through the Toronto Raptors. It took them 7 games to beat Toronto Raptors, and I believe that game 7 was like a tight game as well. Um, and then the second round, the Pistons, that took 7 games as well. And I give them props for winning that actually, because I thought Detroit would win that. But then yeah, obviously when they played the Knicks, their flaws kind of were exposed. Again, I've been a big James Harden fan, but he's starting to get older. He's being a liability on the defensive end, and if you're kind of relying on old Harden, dribbling the ball out and kind of running your system, like it can work on the regular season, but him at this age, it's just you're just not going to win or far in the playoffs right now. Mitchell, like again, he's a good player, but I have those questions. Can he be the number one on a championship team? He's a great scorer, but it's the two-way side of things as well. And again, he's one of the best players in the league. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if he can be the best player on a championship team. But I mean, the big move they did commit to him long term. They paid him the bank, so they are going to be stuck with Donovan Mitchell. Um, and this is one of the teams that was in LeBron's race. Maybe this was one of the teams if they traded for Jalen Brown, maybe they got LeBron, or if they maybe kept Garland instead of Harden, maybe LeBron would have came there. But we don't know. You see all these fake rumors, but besides the point, they are here what they are now. They're pretty much the same team from last season. Again, I think they'll be middle of the pack. Maybe they'll make the playoffs, but I'm not too optimistic on this team in my opinion. I think maybe their best chance was last season. I don't even think they were that. I think they were kind of overrated a little bit last season, but I think they went as far as they could, in my opinion. Um, and I don't know if they're gonna make any crazy moves, but that's my opinion. They'll probably re-sign Harden though. And I get it. He played good during the season. I just again he's getting old, and especially even in his prime, he wasn't the best in when the playoff series gone farther against good teams. So I don't expect it to happen now when he's much older. He doesn't have the same athleticism, but he still has a high IQ basketball player. Still can play make. Still one of the best playmakers in the league. And I know Mobley. I just think they have a lot of like good name players, but I think a lot of them are kind of a little overrated. Like Evan Mobley's a really good player, but I think he's a little overrated as well. And I know you've touched on previous podcasts. Like I like Jared Allen, but it's just like a solid team. I don't see them as true championship contenders. But I'll let you talk your thoughts about them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you and I have talked in the past off the record a lot of times. I've never really been too fond of the Cavs. I know last season when the playoffs were rolling around, I predicted them to win a couple of series here and there, but I think that was maybe less about them, and it was just maybe I don't know, it was just circumstantial. But I've always felt they were a bit, I don't want to say overrated or overhyped, but maybe for lack of a better term. And I mean, we talked about it earlier. I think the East is infinitely better. I think to be honest with you, I think their window to have made the finals was in the last 2 seasons, and I think that window came and went. Um, I obviously they're not bums. They'll make the playoffs. They'll be they'll be a competitive team. I do think they might have one more move in them. I mean, that's a little bit more to be determined. I know there've been some rumors that they might be in the running for a guy like Jonathan Kaminga.
Yeah,
You mentioned my guy DeRozan earlier. I know they're one of the teams as well. Although I think it's more likely to be maybe a Miami or a Denver, if I had to guess. Um, but like you said, I think they'll. It seems like they'll just kind of run it back, and I just think as we continue to run through the teams in the Eastern Conference, we talked about the Atlantic Division. We'll get to the remaining teams, in a future recording. Um, and then obviously you mentioned Detroit, which will be the last team we talk about. I think it's hard for me to see them, like it's hard for me to see them making it back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think their best window of opportunity was last season and the year before that. And I think the East is the strongest it's ever been. And, for a team that I already kind of felt was a little overrated and overhyped and maybe circumstantially could have made a run, I think those circumstances have changed. And the way I feel about the team hasn't. And that's kind of the distinction of context that I would make. So, well, obviously they're not a bunch of bums, and they're not gonna be the 15th place team in the Eastern Conference. Um, I think a lot of the teams around them in the East are either on paper better or they're going to incrementally improve. Whereas I think with Cleveland, I don't know. I just don't see it in the same like they're not going to suck ass, but um, I think it would surprise me if they were an Eastern Conference Finals NBA Finals team. To me, I think they're the type of team that will maybe make the playoffs and they'll get bounced in the first round, but obviously it's a little too early to tell. And then, of course, we'll see if they make another move or not. Maybe that changes the calculus a little bit, whether it's a Kaminga or DeRozan or somebody like that. But assuming that the roster kind of stands the way that it is, now, I will say we talked about Summer League. Again, we'll get there in due time. The guy they took in the second round is an absolute beast. One of the steals of the draft, Malik Thomas out of Arkansas. So I give them a lot of credit for that, for being able to get a steal like that in the second round. So it does. I do want to throw in that caveat. I think that guy's really good. So I think in due time, if they can find the minutes for him in due time, I think that raises their ceiling a little bit. But maybe that's maybe separate context from a Chicago and a Milwaukee. But maybe with a guy like that, when he gets more minutes, and maybe a season or two from now, maybe the calculus changes a little bit. But yeah, I think you and I are pretty much in agreement. I think there's a lot of good teams in the East, and they might get kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit.
yeah, I totally agree, man. The East is getting better. They're kind of the same, around the same, or maybe a little worse. So, I think, like you said, I agree, and I think they need to make like a. They'll probably have another move in hand, but I think they need to make another move. But switching over to the final team of this division, this team had a really good regular season last season. They were the number one seed in the East. They kind of fell off in the playoffs, or maybe they got more exposed in the playoffs. I know they did have a nice 3-1 comeback, but they were down 3-1 against the Magic, which were the final seed in the East. I know you in the past have said like if Charlotte played them, maybe Charlotte would have beaten them in the first round. Um, and then I mean, they went to the second round. They took the Cavs to 7 games. I was honestly hugely disappointed in this team in the playoffs. During the regular season, I would watch this team a lot just because I had Jalen Duren in fantasy, and I would just kind of watch them because they were kind of fun. They were a fun regular season team. They play hard. They were fun to watch. But maybe they just weren't as good in the playoffs because the talent gap. Maybe they were just better in the regular season because they tried harder more than other teams. And then once they started playing more talented teams in the playoffs, where like all teams are kind of going all out, they kind of got exposed on that route. I was disappointed in Jalen Duren in the playoffs. I thought the regular season he was a beast. I don't know what was his decline. Was it more so experience in the playoffs? Was he injured, just hiding an injury? Was he dealing with some personal drama? We don't know, but obviously the obvious offseason is him and the Pistons, are they going to get an agreement of a contract? I get why the Pistons are kind of maybe afraid to pay him all that money after that type of postseason, and being stuck like overpaying for a. I think he's really good, but like that playoff drop off was concerning. But maybe you don't want to overthink it. Maybe it was just kind of a fluke thing. So that is a big question the Pistons need to answer. Another big question I think they need to answer, and maybe they tried, maybe they didn't. Obviously, you don't want to overreact and overpay for a second star, but I think they need to put someone around Cade. Maybe necessarily it doesn't need to be like a superstar, but I think they need to put someone that can get buckets. Like I think like what CJ McCollum did to the Hawks, I think would have been perfect with the Pistons. As you saw in the playoffs, Cade was really the only guy that can create the offense, get his own bucket. I like Dennis Jenkins a lot too, but truly in the playoffs, I think the Pistons got exposed for not having a support with Cade in the offense. I think it was too Cade centric, and I think Cade Cunningham can be a best player in the championship team. I just think the last season kind of exposed the rest of the team regarding who else can score on the team. Um, um, so I say maybe if they were to make a move for like a Tyler Hero, or maybe they go for DeRozan. I don't think he's in the list, but if they go for a player like that, maybe it'd be a short-term fit. But I think they ultimately in the long term need to find a second star around Cade. I think Durant can be a really good third piece, and I think they need like a second top scorer more so, because even if Jalen Durant is your number two, he's not known to be like getting you like 30 or like 25, or running an offense. He's more so kind of getting his buckets from pick and rolls, or at times getting the ball in the post. He's an athletic big man. But I think the big question for the Pistons is who are they gonna who's the second player they're gonna get around Cade? Maybe they can find in the short term with like DeRozan or someone like that. But I think they need to find a more long term answer on that end. I think this team will still be competitive, pretty good. I don't think they'll be first in the East again, but I think like pretty similar to the Cavs. I think they'll just be middle of the pack. Their ceiling is probably conference finals if everything really goes right, but truly they'll probably be a first or second round exit. Unless I think this team has a move down the line. Maybe it's whether this offseason or this trade deadline or next offseason. But this is a team to watch in the future. But maybe I think record wise in the East, they probably take a little step back, in my opinion, since the East got better. And now that teams actually are gonna like put them on the list, like they're a team to watch. Maybe they kind of came on the surprise for some people last season, which kind of helped them get the net one seed. But now that people know who they are, they know how good Cade is. I think people will, and the regular season will kind of catch up to them, and I think they need to make a move. And I know they traded away Isaiah Stewart, so I'll let you touch on this team.
Yeah, no, you make some really good points. Yeah, I think Detroit is definitely one of the most interesting teams in the NBA heading into the upcoming season. Like you mentioned, I mean, it's a team that was first in the East in the regular season, and I think we kind of forget about not we, but I think it kind of gets forgotten a little bit that like, hey, this was a team that was first in the East in the regular season. Um, you mentioned the Jalen Duran thing. That's a big question mark, kind of hovering around the offseason. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to take the qualifying offer at some point? Are they going to be able to find some form of a deal? It seems like from everything that sources tell us here at the Unfiltered Report, for lack of a better term, it does seem as if. It does seem as if they're quite far apart in contract negotiations. I think you make a good point where this is a guy who in the regular season was spectacular. He was one of the best young bigs in the league, and he's still super young. Didn't have the greatest postseason, but I do think you make an interesting point where I think I would tend to agree where maybe there might be a little bit of an overreaction to how he played in the playoffs, and maybe you have to kind of show some confidence in the young fellow that he'll be able to figure it out in a second postseason run. And they can't just give up on him after a couple of bad playoff games and see how he responds. I think it just so happens that his bad playoffs coincided with him being eligible for a new contract. I think if it wasn't for that, I think he'd be a slam dunk. Obviously, he's a really good player, man. I think he's a great player. I think there has been a little bit of a maybe overreaction to his playoff performance, but I also maybe by that same token do think that there might be some validity to that. I think if anything, I want to see how he responds because I think with a guy like that, as talented as that is, you want to see how they respond from a situation like that, and can they add elements to their game and take another leap forward, or or not. I think that's a big question mark there beyond the contract stuff. Um, we'll get to the Western Conference in due time. Losing Tobias Harris to the Spurs,
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
was a bit of a tough blow for them. They did get Isaiah Joe from OKC. Someone who can shoot the ball, one of the best shooters in the league. We've talked a little bit about some of the rookies in summer league and whatnot. We'll get there in due time. But the guy they drafted, in the first round, Abuko Okori, he's a really good young, fun player. You mentioned a guy like Danis Jenkins. I think both of those two guys are totally fun in their own different ways. A guy like Abuko Okori is not the biggest, strongest, tallest guy in the world, but he can definitely be one of those guys who can create for himself and create for others offensively and take a little bit of a load off. Now, obviously, he'll be a rookie. We'll see how much he plays. They had a guy like Chaz Lanier can shoot the crap out of the basketball, second-year guy. I liked him a lot. Come out of North Florida, Tennessee to Detroit, and they still, a guy like Ron Holland, maybe, maybe with a guy like Tobias Harris leaving town, maybe Ron Holland finally gets the opportunity to get some more minutes in a starting role. And, he's a guy who was a top 10 pick just a couple of years ago, and he's only, what is it, like 21, 22? So I think everything that, I've seen out of Detroit and that I get the sense of is that I think they're to be honest, I think they kind of remind me a little bit of the Eastern Conference version of Houston a little bit, where it's like,
Hmm.
I think maybe because they haven't had the immediate success, and obviously, ironically, they have the two Thompson twins, but I think they got a lot of talent, and they shouldn't get forgotten just because the other teams are getting better. But at the same time, the more the time goes by, you don't want to get lapped either. So it's a little bit of both. So I think when we get to Houston, that'll be a big part of the conversation, and then same with Detroit. Although I think they're two different, parts of the coin. When we get to Houston, obviously, it will be a different conversation. But yeah, with Detroit, I think I thought you made a really good point that I had. Where now that they finished first in the Eastern Conference. When it comes to the regular season, teams aren't gonna, they're gonna have a target on their back, like, oh, these guys are good, we can't take them lightly. So in a lot of cases, you either sink or swim with that, and the East has only gotten better with all these different teams that we're mentioning, and we'll continue to mention. And are they going to maybe finish first in the Eastern Conference regular season again? Maybe not. But you mentioned a guy like Cade Cunningham. He's an elite player. He can be one of the. I mean, he already is, but he can definitely be one of the best players in the NBA, and a guy who can, help take them to a championship in the coming years. But going back to my point about Houston, the reason I compared it to is because I think with Houston, maybe other people would disagree. I don't know what you think as well, but I felt like them going out and getting Kevin Durant on paper, media and everybody's going to chart that off and like, oh, Kevin Durant, we love you. Kevin Durant is a great move. But I felt like that kind of hurt them a little bit, maybe in some aspects. And so I think what Detroit is doing is the opposite of that approach. And, their front office is being really patient with the young players and saying, hey, you know what? We don't want to overreact too much. Maybe Jalen Duren contract negotiations notwithstanding, and they want to at least maybe give these guys a couple of months. And maybe if they underwhelm and underachieve a little bit in the first couple of months of the regular season, then you can change the calculus a little bit. But don't overreact too much to one bad playoff run with a team who really made their first playoff run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and that's like the big decision they gotta make. Like, they made some moves on the radar that, like, and you pointed out some of them, like Isaiah Joe. Like, they got John Collins. I
Oh,
wonder if
yeah,
Ausar
John Collins,
Thompson.
too.
Yeah, I wonder if Ausar Thompson. like him having an extra year, is he going to develop his like offensive game? Because I think he has athleticism and defense. It's just him, and we've seen these some of these type of players. Like, is he eventually going to develop? Sorry, is he going to develop a?
What?
Thank you, thank you. Is he going to develop a shot or like an offensive game? Because on the defensive side, and athleticism wise, he's really good. Um, and yeah, they got John Collins, Isaiah Joe is he's pretty good player as well. Ron Holland will get more time, but Tobias out. I do think the loss of Tobias is honestly kind of an underrated big loss for them because I think Tobias was able to provide that scoring for the Pistons that was helping Cade at times. Not saying like Tobias is an all star or anything, but I think Tobias had a really good season last year. And I think his loss will be missed. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if Detroit has like a short term move they're gonna make. I think maybe like for the short term, get someone that's like a DeRozan type or that type of player that can help Cade off the ball more. Because I think Cade was too ball dominant in the postseason for the Pistons, and I think give it like half a season or a year where they maybe make a splash and have someone else another like maybe all star surrounded with Cade, but that's a future. That's kind of my thoughts on maybe what they should do.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I get what you're saying. Like maybe not overpay maybe for like even though I don't think they were in the race, but like overpay for like a Giannis or over like pay for a big move just because you had a disappointing postseason. You're still a young team. You got some still good players. Like again, the East got better, so I don't maybe expect this team to be first, but like you said, I think it'll be a competitive. My ceiling on them is Eastern Conference Finals, but but they could also be a team that could lose in the first round as the is
Yeah.
getting better.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I definitely agree with you that I think the loss of Tobias is big. I do agree. I think DeMar makes a lot of sense, but I'm not really sure if they'll do that. I don't really see any inclination that they will, but I think, I mean, just as far as the short term, I mean, obviously Tobias does a lot of things defensively as well that DeMar can't do, but I think offensively DeMar can do a lot. Whatever Tobias can give you offensively, he can give you the same, if not more. So it's a little bit of it almost, that is and Detroit's got the defensive capabilities, I think, to be able to, maybe offset a little bit of that. But, so I do think that would be a move they should consider. Whether they do it or not, I doubt it. But I think, I think that would make a lot more sense in the short term than maybe ironically like a Kevin Durant or something like that. I think at least for Detroit, I think it's tough because you never want to wait too long and overplay your hand, and then you end up getting fucked. But you also don't want to the other direction and give up too quickly. So I think they'll try to find a little bit of a middle ground. At least give the team, maybe see like you mentioned some of these guys. Maybe they take a step forward with like a Ron Holland. I mean, Oscar Thompson's already he's already one of the best defenders, but maybe give you something a little more offensively, which I mean, he doesn't even really need to. But so they're an interesting team to me. I want to see with a target on their back. How do they respond to that? And then the big thing for me is the Duran situation as well. What happens with that? And then if he does come back and he does play for Detroit, depending on what that contract situation looks like, does he come in motivated? Does he take a step up? Does he step back? I think he's kind of I don't want to say the X factor because it's a guy who's an all-star level player last year, but I think assuming he comes back, or if he doesn't, I think he'll come back, but if it's on a qualifying offer versus a longer term deal and maybe they find a way to make an extension, I want to see how he responds to that disappointing playoff run last year.
Yeah, man, and no, I think you make great points there. I think this division is honestly pretty interesting. I think like after talking it through, like, there were some under the radar moves, like I was totally forgot about, and there's some underrated storylines, kind of flying by with this division. Obviously, with Sixers kind of being the whole talk, and I get why, but yeah, no, there's some interesting storylines with this team, and to end it, man, like. My high level like early predictions on this division. Um, I think it's a battle between three teams in the division for the top for like regular season wise. I don't know the specific ranking, but I think Indiana, Cleveland, and Detroit. I'll probably give Cleveland the edge on the regular season wise, just because Detroit's probably gonna need a little time with like the Duran situation and just like the pieces they lost, and then Indiana, I'm just giving them a little time because Halliburton's coming back and just kind of getting his flow back. But postseason wise, I think Indiana's the most dangerous out of all these teams in the division if everything is going right. Like I think they have the highest ceiling, is what I mean from this division. Um, and then I like you said, Milwaukee, and Chicago. Like I think their ceiling is a plan, but I think they're like interesting teams to watch, and I think Milwaukee's a little more riskier with the health wise with Tyler Hero, but I think those two teams though are still like interesting watch, good league pass watches if their team is healthy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I think Indiana's going to be a dangerous team, especially come playoff time. Nobody's going to want to play them. But yeah, man, this was a great Central Division preview, and some LePropaganda in there as well, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate you taking the time to take the time out of your night to make this happen. I know it's getting a little late, but I appreciate you, Brody, and we'll be back soon to talk about the last division in the Eastern Conference before we get over to the West.
yeah, man. No, it was awesome talking about the NBA, man, and yeah, get some rest, bro. Thanks for hosting, bro.
Hey, thank you, man. Cheers.
Cheers up. Peace, y'all.
Peace.